Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Business Badassery podcast. I'm Billy Olds, your host, and you'll notice I got rid of Caleb today. Not because I don't love him, but because we know this isn't his greatest strength, and so I have him busy at work. But I have two amazing guests with me today. I'd love to introduce to you. Harrison Wright is someone that I've met recently. He's a member of Caleb's 500K Accelerator, which is the year-long program. So I've had the pleasure of coaching him a couple of times and realized he has so much to offer you guys that I cannot wait for you to meet him. Harrison, would you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Harrison Wright. Thanks, Billy. Really appreciate you having me on. I'm an entrepreneur now. I've been a recruiter or currently running a recruitment company or one of those two things for must be 15 years now. So I started recruiting back in what you might call the industrial age. And I was in industrial engineering as well, recruiting very local people for very local positions. And I've seen pretty much everything change in the past 15 years. Now I run a company recruiting for the cryptocurrency and Web3 industry, which is very global. That's always been a global industry. I think in 3 years of running this company, I've set up 3 face-to-face interviews, and those were all final interviews for C-level positions. So world's definitely changed a lot.
You're not kidding. And a result of that changing world, everyone, is my fantastic relationship with this other gentleman on your screen, Muhammad. Muhammad is someone that my business partner and I hired to be the day-to-day operations manager of one of our businesses. That one's hibernating a little bit right now, but Muhammad still has his finger on the pulse there. He's working with Caleb and the guys on the 90-day business builder, and he has his own business. But Muhammad, I'd love for you to tell the audience more about who you are.
Hi guys. I come from a freelance world. I'm sorry. So I come from a freelance world. I've been doing like a virtual assistants for like more than 5 years now. And then I wasn't that good at that time, but then I met Billy and the team and everyone, and then we started building businesses. And there comes in a company that, polished me and everyone who was there. And at that time, I didn't think of like starting a business or like improving myself, but with the passage of time, like it was the ultimate goal. So then I like 2 or 3 months ago, I started a company. I started working on it, and it somehow relates with what Harrison does. He started like 3 years ago, and I started it 3 months ago. But it is coming out really well, and we are seeing potential. And after like in a few days, we are gonna be bringing on our first 2 or 3 clients, and it is I'm hoping to to update the freelance world. We hire people remotely on these specific platforms like Upwork or Fiverr, so giving them some value, and like this will definitely work out. So we are trying to do that in a very simplistic way, I can say. So that's what we are doing currently. And on to you, Billy.
What I think is really cool about this is that Muhammad's a little bit modest, as always. He is a brilliant young guy who came to us with lots of ideas, and all we've done is just let him run with them. We haven't stood in his way. And as a result, he's learned to train other people in his local area, which I think is the greatest thing. So in addition to, we have the headhunter, who's a professional headhunter for big companies and is now working in the crypto world. And then we have Muhammad on the other end of the universe right now, who came to me as a freelancer, and he's somebody that I hired to work incredibly closely with a lot of responsibility in one of my own businesses. And now he's also doing recruiting and finding great candidates in the VA world. So I thought these would be a great pair of guys to bring together to talk about finding employees and hiring people around the world in this new global and digital economy. What does that feel like? How do you do it? And how do you make that work if it's something you've never done before. So, Harrison, let me ask you first, what does a headhunter typically do?
How many ways could I answer that question? There's the short way, the long way, the I'll bore you to tears with a million process pieces way. Fundamentally, it's the art of converting I was going to say converting a job requirement, but it's actually more than that. Oftentimes, a company will say, hey, we want X. I want somebody that can do this thing. And the immediate thing most people think is, well, I need this kind of a developer. So obviously, I need to hire the same developer from my competitor across the street. No, that's a lazy way of thinking about it. So our function is to translate a business need into an ideal profile, and then turn that ideal profile into an appealing offer, and then take that to people who are probably happy doing what they're doing right now, but convert them into candidates for our clients, and then manage the process of closing the deal. That's in a nutshell what we do.
I think that I've always been fascinated by it. I've had headhunters reach out to me, but I've never utilized one. But how do you deal with bridging the physical distance and bringing people into the new digital culture if they haven't been working as freelancers or with a role where they get to be virtual?
I gotta say, I haven't done a lot of that because just by the nature of what we do, people usually hire us to find somebody who's almost an exact match for the job, which means they've probably done it before. But I can say I've gone through that transition myself, and there have been occasions where I've brought people, so I've had a couple of occasions where I've hired someone into the crypto industry who's worked for a local company doing whatever it is they do. I think in that case it was paid advertising. And so the work ethic and environment is very, very different than some of the types of people they need to deal with. So I can speak a little bit to that, but I've also been through that transition myself. When I started my career, we worked in offices. You'd usually have, if you worked at a mid-sized recruiting company in England, you'd have 60, 70 people all sat there on the phone in one office. Now, I've worked from home for 7-8 years now. Now I live in Mexico. We have clients mostly in the US, but also all across the world. I've only met a couple of my clients or candidates in person. It's all been, even arranging an interview now is, okay, let's figure out the 3 different time zones that are involved here. Building a team entirely remotely. Normally you have all that osmosis from hearing people on the phone day to day. Now we're collaborating from all over the world. So yeah, it's very different for sure. If I go back to your original question, I think there are some criteria that are required to be successful in this environment that is not normally the case in the old industrial model of work. So in the industrial model of work, you could have a lot of people who maybe they weren't particularly self-motivated and they needed to be around other people and need to have somebody telling them what to do. But if they had those things, they could do a good job. That doesn't work in a remote or global environment. So that's number one. Number two is, this is maybe a bit broader than the question you asked, but the nature of the jobs themselves have changed dramatically in the past 10 or 15 years. So if you take sales, for example, I used to meet a lot of people even 10 years ago who maybe they weren't particularly bright, but they were really hardworking and they were really driven and they were really personable and they would be very successful just on the basis of having the right work ethic and attitude. But I never meet people like that anymore. I don't know about in your field, but the work has gotten too complicated. So you need to be very intelligent, very adaptable, and have the personal skills and be able to be self-driving. So have you ever read The Sovereign Individual, either of you or anyone listening?
Oh, tell us about it.
It's kind of a bit of a Bible in crypto for people. It was written in 1997 and a fascinating book. They predicted many things, including the invention of Bitcoin, and many other recent events, which I won't dive into too many rabbit holes. But the basis of their thesis was that the internet and what the internet and similar technologies do is they change what they call the logic of violence. So their thesis is the logic of violence is what shapes society. So in the industrial age, large-scale violence produced great returns. So it led to the creation of giant nation states and standing armies and things like that. Because if you look at, say, the 19th century, everything was much smaller scale. So you had a lot less big wars and things like that, but you also had more organized crime on a smaller scale. So their thesis is what the internet does is it reduces the logic of violence again. So there's less, say, for example, if wealth is now detached from location and people who earn high incomes are not tied to a place anymore, they can move wherever they want. What's the implication of that for the nation state? They're not going to be able to tax people anymore. So that unit is going to reduce, it's going to die. You're going to end up with maybe city states or very small distributed sovereignties spread around the world, and individuals are going to have a lot more power. So they predicted all of these things coming to pass, and one of the implications of that was a bifurcation in society. So, and you see it now. There's a hollowing out of the middle. Mm-hmm. Everything's going into either the low end or the high end, and so what this remote world I think does is it opens up huge opportunities for people at the high end. But if you're not in that high end, you're going to have a rough time of it, unfortunately, because now let's use recruitment as an example. If you're a recruiter in 1960, you're probably recruiting in a local market. I don't know, let's say you live in St. Louis. You recruit accountants in St. Louis, or maybe just all people in St. Louis. You're competing with whoever else is a recruiter in St. Louis. So your scope is limited, but by the same token, so is your competition. Now, if you try to recruit accountants, well, you're competing with people all over the planet, and all the value rises to the top. So I think, as Caleb talks about quite often, it's if you're looking on an individual level, what does this mean for me? The more niche you are, given that there's no geographical constraints on competition anymore, the easier it's going to be to build something of value.
Well put. And I think we're finding that to be true. Muhammad, you're a great exemplar of that new model because you're really bringing opportunity to your region. Can you tell us a little bit more about your region, your community, and how you're able to affect change?
So I think COVID has played a big role in spreading the opportunities all over the world. People are moving towards like hiring globally instead of like hiring a person at a certain location. Like big companies are now hiring remotely. They are moving, and it is beneficial for them in a way that it reduces their office costs and a lot of other things that they have to give benefits to the employees. So it is reducing their costs overall. And then to the community, I agree with Harrison with the aspect that the top people are getting more and more opportunities, and the lower end is getting nothing. So my business model was just this, that the top people are getting everything. For example, if you want to hire a fluent speaker, English speaker, you'll see clients from the US or an English speaking country. But you won't consider Pakistan. I have seen like job posts that are really good, and they don't consider Pakistan or India or any other such country that are third world countries. They are considered third world countries, but they don't consider them because they think like they don't speak English, like they are not that understanding. So it is hard for them. I can understand that, but I have met people here while I was hiring for my business. Like they can speak really, really well. We have call centers here that train people to speak English and be fluent, and they can compete actually. So hiring those competent people and showcasing them to the world is itself an art. It's difficult to showcase them to the whole world that we have this talent, and finding them is an absolute it's difficult, very difficult. But yeah, I agree. We meet like people, but it is very tough to manage those regional constrictions, and those boundaries are still separating us. But if I see like the businesses for like after 5 years, it's gonna improve, and the competition is gonna rise massively. But I'm like, I have, for example, I have three phases in my business. That in the first phase, I'll hire like experienced, very talented, and all those skillful people. And in the second phase, I'll hire people who I will train. Like they'll know computer, they'll know how to write English, but they might don't know how to like speak English well. So I'll hire them, I'll train them, it's uplifting the community. So I'll train them. And then there comes the third phase, people who don't know like computer. They don't know, like they somewhat know English, but they are not very well at it. So you train them. So it's like I am from like a very low end community, or very low skilled people from a community that is not very much skilled from an area. And I like with Billy, and like with experience of 5 years, it made me like come to the top. Like it is really valuable. And if I can do it, like people on the other end, Harrison is on one end, and people from the other end can be, can come to the top and show like, Harrison, you should consider me, instead of like going to the high end people who will be like really demanding. I've noticed that like it is tough even in Pakistan. Like it is tough to hire people. They are even I had to travel like 500 kilometers to assure someone that will not steal your data or something. But it is quite difficult. And as far as I know, the people from the US or the other countries, they are very concerned about their privacy, and it is very difficult for them to share their confidential details. And to ensure that we can sign NDAs, and we can assure that this is not going to happen. And because we have not met like physically, as Harrison described, like he has met two of his clients physically only, like two of them. He might have had like thousands, like help thousands of clients and companies, but he has met like two. So it is like it is difficult for them to trust, but people are building. The trust is growing day by day. And it's giving us a push.
That's excellent. I'm excited about it because Muhammad brings a lot. He is what I consider a unicorn. So a person who's not afraid to make mistakes, who's not afraid to ask questions, who keeps driving things forward, and he makes sure that things see completion. So he is one of my favorite people in the whole wide world.
Oh, thank you.
I thought you knew that. But so the audience knows, I've been working with Caleb about 5 years. He actually came to me as a client. I didn't meet Caleb for the first 3 years. We only met in year 4, and we'll hang out again next month. But we've spent very little time in each other's physical company, other than going on a few trips and giving a few masterminds. So we had that same challenge of building a relationship, and one that includes disclosing a lot of personal information, especially within Caleb's businesses, where we have the Sovereign CEO brand as well as his Alpha 2.0 content, which is very different. So we had to bridge all of those things together. And it makes me wonder, guys, how do you develop or help your clients develop a relationship with the new hires that you're passing along to them? Or how do you develop a relationship with the person that you're recruiting so that you do feel some confidence in being able to move ahead or recommend that person?
It's that's one aspect that hasn't necessarily changed as much as you might expect, at least on the recruiting side, as distinct from when they actually work at the company. So even 15 years ago, recruiting was primarily a phone job. So I'd say we would do face-to-face meetings a little more often, but even then, unless you happen to work a local market, like in a specific city, generally, not vast majority of your interactions would be on the phone. Actually, it's a little better now because we have video conferencing as standard. So, when I was a recruiter in 2009, I never knew what any of the people I spoke to looked like. And then very occasionally, maybe a few times a year, we do some sort of face-to-face meeting with a client or occasionally a candidate. But okay, I'll be the guy with the purple briefcase. I'm not, you know what I mean? But, oh, and then you meet this guy that you've been chatting to for 3 years, and then you finally see what they look like. That's a bit strange. So I think actually it's easier now because it's not only Zoom. If you think it's Zoom, and even though Zoom's been around for years, video conferencing only really went mainstream in 2020. Even in 2019, we'd do conference calls and no one would have a video on. So there's that. And then with things like LinkedIn, you already know what everybody looks like on LinkedIn profile, Twitter. So counterintuitively, I think it's actually a lot easier now than it was. When you move into the person actually working at a company, yeah, that's different because they're not in person. But we have so many tools now. I say, in my own company, we have Slack. We do a weekly Zoom meeting. And then with my recruiters and sales team, we do training every day on Zoom. And actually, two of the 3 people on my team live in the same city as me. One of them lives on the other side of Mexico. But even though we only see each other in person maybe every couple of months, maybe you'd say, oh, we should do things more often. But sometimes I like being antisocial. So, but it hasn't impacted everything. The biggest impact I've seen is it's a lot harder to train people remotely. In terms of the working relationship itself or the productivity, I haven't found that to suffer at all versus working in an office. It's just you need to be more discerning about who you hire because they have to be able to motivate themselves to do the work. And you have to have, if you're a company hiring people in this model, then you need to have systems in place to make sure they do feel included. And I guess there are people who have more of a need for that everyday social contact than others. I don't personally have any of them in my team, so I guess I haven't run into this. But if you do have somebody like that, you're going to have to be cognizant of that, or you're probably going to lose them.
That's something that we deal with in Caleb's business. There are a lot of personalities in the business that are like me and Caleb, who are very introverted, don't require much, if any, social contact. I mean, I have dogs, that's enough, right? But we have other people on the team that need daily contact, or at least to feel like they're part of the group, there needs to be a weekly stand-up meeting of 10 minutes. And those are efforts that we learn what our teams are like, and we create the structure that supports all of their needs. Does that mean everyone on the staff is going to jump on a Zoom because Susie and Tom need a little bit of FaceTime? No, but that means that we'll get their team together, or a smaller, small group of the team, to include them so they feel part of the effort and they feel connected. That engagement to me is the most important factor, I think, in hiring people remotely, because the only way people can be self-motivated is if you give them some incentive, right? There has to be some incentive. They're not going to pick up their energy and their skills and bring you their A game every day if you're not giving them something back. So that engagement is the number one thing that I worry about as an employer. I want to make sure everyone feels connected. And I'm that conduit. And a lot of times that's my role, is I'm just the conduit that says, Muhammad, I would love it if you made an effort to talk to Max and Joe 2 days a week so that you can get to know each other and we understand how to better use their skills in our team. Muhammad, what is your experience? Like, what would you add?
Yeah, like I agree with you totally. Like, and appreciation is the thing that makes things easier, and it connects you better. Like, I have been training people in every kind of business, and I've heard that, and I've come to know that if you feel like, if you help them, if you talk to them, like just as a reminder, like, how are you doing? Or like, I think if you need my help, like this sentence can help them. You can build your connection with them. Like, if you need any kind of help, even if it's like the capitalization of A, if you need help with that, let me know, or anything possible. So it makes them feel like you are taken care of. And the other thing is, like, you can you are right in an aspect that you can talk to people for like 30 minutes a week, or whenever you have time, like, or bi-weekly or weekly, or whenever you have time, your schedule allows. You should talk to them. You should talk to them about their surroundings, about themselves, and get to know them better. So they can, if they have any burden on their chest, they can share with you. So they'll know, like, I have someone to share, and it's not my boss or my colleague or someone who is like who has been working previously at this company. The owners or the CEOs will consider him better than me. They'll feel appreciated, and that's what I do. And people usually do better when you do that. But there are some types of personalities who are different, who are just like who needs a specific, who can't share anything with you, who are really 100% introverts. So those personality types are very difficult to deal with, and they don't build their connections really well in the beginning. But you need to keep pushing back. And you are a family, as when you are working together, you are a family. So with in my point of view, it is, you need to push it, you need to build that connection. And previously, like a year ago, if I see myself, it is like it is not like building connections or relationships or anything. It was all like, I need to work and earn something, and build my skills. So and then I met Billy, luckily, and she was like, "No, connections are far, far better than building. Working, just working. When you are connected to someone or connected to a group of people, you will work, you will improve, and those connections are gonna help you when you are at your lowest. You know." So I came to know that, and now for myself and every friend who needs my advice or help in any case, we are a bunch of friends who are working remotely with companies. So I advise them, like, it's not money or it's not your growth only. You need to build something. You need to build the connections, and then you will eventually grow yourself and the company and the people, and the trust will build up sooner than you expected. So it's just
But
that.
here's something that I get a lot, and I'd love for both of you to answer this. How do you do that? Oh my God, I've never hired a VA before. Oh my God, I'm gonna hire my first person. And Billy says that she really likes working with these Pakistani team and this Lebanon team. Oh shit. I what? That's scary. How do you respond to that, guys?
I don't think you'll hear anyone who says anything different than, oh, I didn't want to hire this person, and then, oh, now I've hired people and I've experienced what it's like. Why didn't I do that 2 years ago? Literally every time. That's my experience as well. Which is kind of ironic considering what I do for a living. But when I started this company, I had no intention of hiring anybody at all. I was always planning to be a solo operation. And then about a year ago, it just got crazy busy. Crypto markets. Everyone was talking about crypto a year ago, not so much now. And I'm so busy. I'd be stupid if I didn't outsource or delegate something here. So I hired my first person, administrator, who then turned into a researcher. And I didn't really know what I was doing. I'd never hired anyone before for myself, despite hiring people for other people for a long time, but it's a very different thing. So, okay, what do I do now? Well, okay, what do I need help with? Okay, this. Okay, so I'll show how to do this, do that, then put the Slack channel. A few months later, you mean I don't have to sit here for 2 days trawling the internet, drawing up lists of 150 people now? I can just say, can you do this? Why didn't I do this before? And then it's been that way with every person I've hired. So how did I do without this person before? I had to make my own sales calls? No way. But I think the thing about it is, this I think this applies to business owners as well as people who, in traditional companies hiring for themselves for the first time. See, something I see as a recruiter is people often screw up when they go from being an individual contributor to being a manager or a business owner. The usual, and I see this with, in crypto, there's a lot of 30 and younger founders who don't have much business experience who suddenly have millions of dollars in funding and they need to build a company. And what makes somebody really good as an individual contributor is the opposite often of what makes them really good as a leader. If you're a really good individual contributor, take salespeople. What makes someone a great sales? Well, they work really hard. They're intense. They're doing extra stuff. They're learning. They're applying. They're kind of selfish, self-absorbed a lot of the time.
Yeah, they're pushy, which is, double-edged sword, great and sometimes not so great.
Yeah,
sales tend to be big personalities.
They can be. And whether it's someone, companies do this, they say, hey, oh, Dave's our best sales guy, we should make him the sales manager. Or if it's not that scenario, if you're really good at what you do, you think, why am I working for this guy? Why don't I start my own company? So that way you end up in charge of building teams. But then if you apply that same mindset when you're leading people, it's not going to work, because no matter how hard you work or how much extra you take on your shoulders, you can't outwork what 5 people can do. You're just going to burn yourself out and annoy everybody else because you're not delegating. Your success goes from how do I do all these things to how do I help these other people to be great at doing all these things and align the incentives and environments so they can do it. You actually, sometimes these days, now I have a team doing all of the things I used to do. What am I doing? I should feel busier than this. No, this is actually right. I shouldn't be doing that. I should be helping these guys to do that thing better so I can do this thing, which then later I'll hire somebody else to do once I understand it well enough. It's a different mindset.
It truly is. And I think, Mohammed, you've shifted into that mindset in the last year.
Yeah. Like, I wasn't handling that many positions at first, but I am a learner and I don't deny to anything. So it makes a huge, it's a huge factor in learning and growing. And denying to something is not my niche. And then I ended up handling like each and every, task of the company, from handling clients to handling vendors to communicating via email and then handling socials and all of that good stuff. And then we were at a point we should have hired someone that will do these small tasks, and that's how the growth happens. And Harrison is right, like we should delegate tasks to more people than handling them by yourself. So in my company as well, I have a partner who does whenever I'm not feeling like I'm too much like burdened. Can you do this? Or you can handle this at least, so I can do this instead. So we are sharing and we have the same attitude. So how do people?
Oh, Mohammed, I think that's an interesting point. Sorry to interrupt you. But the way that we work together is we both take ownership for all of the projects. And we never say, I've never heard Muhammad say, or really any team member that's lasted with me, that's not my job. Because that attitude is the attitude, right? That you're really buying into when you're buying staff. If you have someone who's interested in learning, who wants to keep improving themselves and will take ownership, I think you've won half of the battle right out of the gate, just by finding that attitude. The skills can be taught, right?
Yeah, but there are some things that can't be pushed, or that can't be you can't teach them to a guy. There are things like, if they are not putting the learning capability is is the end of everything. We can if someone is a learner, good. If it is not, period, done. You can't go like very far with that guy. So I am receiving resumes and applications every day, And I've seen people like they are sending me videos of them like for really short videos. I live here, I do this, thank you. So we can't really go with that. I just dustbin that right away. So it is the attitude that matters. And I should revert to the question that uh, how do you deal with people that say like how do you work with a team from Lebanon or a team from Pakistan or uh, it depends on the people, but there is a point when they come to know your capabilities and you know you. It's the point where they put all their eggs in your basket, and the trust building and your when you reveal yourself as the true gatekeeper or the true person who can take care of them, it's done. But everyone can't reach that point. When we were hiring from Upwork, it takes like 3 or 4 tries to find that right person, and people are afraid of wasting their time on 2 or 3 people. It is very, 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 very lucky chance that you get your person in the very first try. It is very difficult. And Upwork is growing. If you consider like from my country, every second person has a profile on Upwork, and they
Wow.
do have copy pasted proposals, and you can't really judge like if this person is a good you know contributor or not. They are wasting the whole marketplace, and the owners or the handlers are not taking care of that. So like they are not taking care of that, but they are getting their commission. And at the end of the day, the businesses are getting the loss. They are losing everything, their time, their money, and each and everything. They have to try again. And after several tries, they tend to hire someone locally. I've seen that. I had an experience when someone was hiring me from Pakistan and then another person from the US, but she was working remotely, and then he had to, hire someone from his place. So it is very difficult, and it totally depends on the person on the other end, the freelancer who is working with you. It totally depends on him. You can't really, judge. Good people can be bad, but their attitude, at the end, attitude makes a huge difference. So I think that's the end of this, uh,
Yeah.
conversation.
I think that's a great
Everything
point.
is attitude.
Everything is attitude. Other
Yeah,
things can be taught, attitude cannot be taught.
exactly.
You can improve it, help someone improve their attitude maybe, but that's not an investment of time and energy that you should be making. That's
Yeah,
when you realize it's time to break up with that employee or freelancer or whatever that role is. You can break up with a freelancer or a coach just the same as you can break up with a client or a partner.
yeah.
Because really, this is
It
go ahead.
takes huge efforts. There are some points. I've said like there is a point. You keep testing him like it's your it's testing you like, oh, I am pushing him harder, 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 and he's not delivering anything. That's what happened with two of your people from the Caleb's business builder. So one is Hansa and the other one is Stefan. So they are both experiencing like they have been paying for like 4 straight months, and they haven't shown a single performance report or single client in turn. So it happens, but there is a point like you should not test a person for like 4 months. It's too much time. So, like a month or two is enough to see like if they will work for us, or if we can bring them to the right path, if they can if they can align themselves with our goals, and they can make their attitude right. It's quite difficult.
It
You
is.
know,
And
And
oh, go ahead, please, Harrison.
there's a concept here that I think is useful. Like, if we look at recruiting from the perspective of being a headhunter, when we put a search plan together, what we're looking at is, the job is, you can look at it at multiple levels. On the one hand, the job is the job description and what the company wants. But if we want to convince someone to consider leaving a job where they weren't thinking of moving and they're happy and come and work with this other place instead, then what we really need to be looking at it as is the job is a vehicle for them to accomplish their goals, or can it be? So when we get a prospective candidate on one of these initial calls, we don't sit there pitching them the job or telling, hey, you have this great blah, 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 blah. No one wants to hear that stuff. It's tell me about your career. Tell me about what's great. What do you really love about what you're doing right now? And what's maybe not so good? And then we dig into that. Is there pain there? Is there hidden pain? But what really drives this person? What's their vision for their life? And then we've got to look at, okay, so now we understand that. Does this job, or can this job represent a solution to their problem? And if the answer might be no, they might be say it's I don't know, just salesperson, for example. They might be the best salesperson in their industry on the planet. But if they don't have something they're dissatisfied with that can be solved by this new company, there's no point trying to recruit them because it's not a match, even if they're really good. So you'd end up trying to bribe them with money, or, hey, we'll pay you this much more to come and do this job for us. But you're working uphill when you're trying to do that. It's like you can take that on the job as well. So with my team, as I'm sure it is in your business, everything comes down to metrics and ratios. So I know what inputs and ratios we need to achieve my goals, but that's not the conversation I have with my team. The conversation I have, what do you want to accomplish? What would you like to earn? Okay, why is that figure important to you? What does that mean for you if you accomplish that? Okay, well, here's how that breaks down mathematically. This is what you need to do every day if you want to earn that which is important to you. And then then we're all going in the same direction, and everything becomes so much easier because they want to do the same thing that I want to do for their reasons. But if you recruit somebody who, even if they have the skills, if the motivation is not fundamentally aligned with what you want them to do, then you're just going to be batting heads all the time, and it's not going to work. Or if it does work, it's going to be 5 times more effort than if you just made sure that alignment was there in the first place. And I think a lot of people miss that.
I think that may be the most valuable part of this call, of this session, is understanding that you need to give people the value that they are looking for. Money is just one of the things that we give employees and freelancers. And at the end of the day, it's probably the least important thing that we give them. It's really easy to get into wars where you want to snatch somebody good away from another company, from a competitor, for example. It'll, as Harrison mentioned earlier, boy, I could just steal their salesperson and pay him more, but you haven't necessarily met him in his need. He'll say, great, I'll make more money, but this is a pain in my ass. I have to work different hours. There are different tools that you're asking me to use that I don't want to learn. And it's not worth that effort for just some money, for some small, arbitrary amount of money. What else can you give? And identifying that alignment is probably the most important thing you can give to your prospective hires, whether they're freelancers or full-timers. My personal goal, and everyone's heard this so many times, but it's still true, so I'll repeat it. My personal goal is that every person I hire, ideally, I want them to be able to replace me. I want to be obsolete in my business so that I can keep bringing in new innovation work and creating new challenges. But I want Muhammad to replace me. And I want him to, if that's what he wants to do, and we have these conversations, but we want to develop him as a coach because he's profoundly brilliant at connecting people. So we've asked him, is this something you would like? And we can help him grow and find these different trajectories that work for him. And I don't only do this for Muhammad. He's just, I do this for everyone. Muhammad is just the person who rose by far the most quickly, and that I'll do anything to keep. And so the way I keep him isn't by just throwing more money at him, because I can't do that. I'm just not in that position as a human. I'm also kind of cheap, so I can't do that. But what I can do is make sure that we're aligned. I understand what Muhammad's short-term growth goals are, what he enjoys, what he doesn't enjoy, what we can delegate. And so those are conversations that we have on an ongoing basis, much the same as I would in let's say, a romantic or a family relationship. We're always connecting and understanding what the other person's goals are. And I don't necessarily anticipate that his goals are going to be 100% aligned with mine because our lives and our needs are different. But what the important part is to identify where we can meet. And I think that oftentimes is the motivation that people require.
Yeah, like when really you changed my perspective of like the professional life. Uh, I was a money guy like 2 years ago. My when I started full time working as a freelancer, I thought like I'm gonna make a ton of money. Nothing else, just money. And when I met Billy and Ambrosia, like I changed. Everything changed. Like money is just papers. If it is meeting your needs, if you are living a proper like a normal life, if you are not like having to work on multiple jobs or a tough life, you're good. You're learning. You are growing. So what matters is like learning and growing and everything. And I literally haven't said like no to anything that Billy said because I want to learn. So at the end of the day, like money is nothing. You can literally buy anything in the world. I wanted to buy everything, and I have literally bought it. But now I think of like every person who says like you can throw money at their face and you can do this and you can do that, and my reply is like you'll be tired of like throwing money, but you won't get anything. Be a better human being or a better mm, professional employee or in this world. That's what matters at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I feel like the money and the opportunity come along with that very readily.
Yeah, like they are connected.
Yeah.
So when you are growing, when you are learning, when you are enjoying what you're doing, your value will grow over time. So it's natural. If you're, for example, if you're stealing an employee from a competitor, as Harrison said, they will be valuing themselves at a rate that is not their original, value. You are just stealing them for more money, and they are coming with you instead of like having I need this to grow. They are just working what they were working at the other competitor. They are coming with you for the money, and that value is fake. And at the end of the day, like if they are thrown out of the company, they'll see like, oh, I'm not getting a job at 100K anymore. I'm getting offers or whatever the interviews are. I'm getting, it's good to have more companies on your resume, like good companies on your resume. But your value is, what you are. So if you're receiving like 50Ks, you are what you are. That's your true value. I've seen that happening with people. I have given opportunities to people who were not that valuable, and they are considering themselves like, oh, I can't work at that right now. Like this is too low for what my skill sets are, and they don't even know how to make an email signature, literally. So that's their value. So we are the reason the recruiters or the companies who snatch people from others are the reason people are demanding more and more salaries.
You
True.
know,
It's
Mohammed,
often.
I think
Oh, go ahead, Harrison.
uh, I was going to say, I think misunderstanding this is really expensive for a business owner. But I tell you, something that was always blown my mind is, the worst industry at the planet at hiring for themselves? Recruitment companies. The average recruitment company will hire 10 people to keep one. And I might be exaggerating, but only very slightly if I am. And the reason is they don't have structure or systems or an understanding of the fundamentals. So the way most recruitment companies do hiring is they expect one person to do the entire life cycle of the job. Prospect, win clients, secure job briefs, develop job briefs, recruit candidates, interview candidates, put the whole placement process together, develop the accounts, negotiate the fees. Literally like running the entire little business. They call it a desk in the industry terminology by themselves. Mm-hmm. And there's very few people that are good at all aspects of the job. And if they are, they generally end up starting by themselves. So they hire raw trainees and then expect them to learn all this stuff and be productive and make money in 3 months, or you get fired. And often the actual process of making a placement is luck. You put the inputs in, you can't control if they offer the job or they accept the job. But over time, it averages out. And so they either hire trainees, expect them to get everything, and so the vast majority don't, and then they get fired. So they keep 1 out of 10. Then, I'll get the experienced people. So I recruit in crypto. So the answer to my prayers is to go and hire that guy who's a really good crypto recruiter for my competitor over there, pay them an ungodly amount of money to come and work for me instead. And that works if you sometimes, and they'll make you money, but they'll be just as disloyal to you as they were to them. You're not actually creating anything of value, because all you're doing is paying money for other people to do everything in the way that they do it, but to do it under your umbrella instead. So you're not creating anything of any lasting value. So my approach has been totally different. I deconstructed the job. So, what are all the tasks that need to happen in this business? Okay, so these are the $10 an hour tasks. These are the $100 an hour tasks. These are the $1,000 an hour tasks. What buckets do they fit in? So the first thing I got rid of was the research and all that sort of stuff. It's time intensive, important, but ultimately kind of low value work. So that was the first thing I delegated. Then when I hired my first recruiter, I was like, okay, what is the workflow of this? So it's all the top of funnel stuff that I gave him, and he still does. So all of the initial outreach and first conversation with the candidate. And at the moment, that's all he does. So he does the prospecting calls, emails, works with the sales engagement, gets on the phone, has the initial discovery with them, then he passes it over to me. And I just hired my BD guy a couple months ago. He does the same thing, but on the client side. So he does the initial prospecting. It's kind of like an SDR in a software sales environment. He does the prospecting, he gets the initial interest, initial discovery, then I take over. And eventually I'll train them to do more and more of the process. But right now that's how it's structured. And then I sit in the middle and I put everything together. And the result of that is I never run a team before I started this company. I've hired 3 people, and all 3 of them have been very successful so far. And I don't think that's because I'm brilliant. I think it's because I understood the system of one little thing that I need them to be successful at in order for the system to work. That's manageable. And then eventually they can learn all these other things, and I would hope they would be loyal to me and my company. And if they were going to go and do something else in 5 years, it's not, I'll go and work for that other crypto recruitment company down the street and take all the clients with me. But yeah, so I'm starting to ramble a little bit now, but you see, it's such a problem in the recruitment industry specifically because it's such a complicated job and it's a sales-driven industry. So they just think, hey, let's import this guy from that company there and get him to work here. But even when it works, I'm not going to name any names, but I can think of one of my biggest competitors. They have a pretty sizable team. They've made a ton of money, but I can tell you their profit margins will be much smaller than ours. Because they're paying through the nose for every recruiter. They're not delegating the lower value work to lower cost people. They're paying through the nose for all this stuff, and it's not systematized. So I'm guessing, as the profit I keep is probably the same as a guy with a company quadruple the size and revenue. And I have my system is not going to blow out on me at any moment because people might go to the other crypto recruitment company down the road, and I don't have a replicable system for someone to take over.
That's the secret sauce, isn't it? Systems. And Muhammad and I live by systems and creating SOPs, documenting as much as you can. So it's replicable. I don't ever want to train someone how to handle my email, for example. So we delegate that. Muhammad learns and he teaches the person that we hire. And when I was younger, I was in Muhammad's chair, and that's exactly what I did. I would be hired by these C-level executives, and they didn't often have systems. And they'd say, "Okay, smart girl, you figure it out, and then train someone else if that's what you want to do." And that's exactly what I did for 20 years. So Muhammad's on the same trajectory as me, and we're both, on the same page as Harrison, saying, just document things. If you can make something as easy as an SOP for a singular task, that's one task you are never going to have to sit down face to face and train someone to do. Or it's very unlikely to be something you need to sit down and teach them. There may be questions, but that's much more tenable than spending an hour of your time every day to teach a task.
Yeah, it's very important. It's very important to have the SOPs. Like many companies or businesses don't have anything documented. We have seen that, and we have been building SOPs for our company until the last minute when we hibernated it. So most of the companies don't do it, and I totally agree with Harrison that we should delegate tasks depending on what value it is, what should be the cost of it, cost of this. And when we were negotiating on the offer, really, I remember like I was offered a bit higher rate, and then I said like, no, this is loss to your business. So if you hire someone for this rate and pay me this, you'll get two brains and 60 or 80 hours. Do this instead of like giving me that much and burdening me, or not actually burdening, or having it do all by myself. Get two brains in that, and that's how you do this. And there is when I'm hiring people right now, like it is very difficult to manage people. And people like, for example, a company that I am providing a VA to, he needs a developer come VA. So it's very difficult combining all those skills. And another person needs like a marketer plus a VA, and then an admin, and then he should also do some other tasks. So it is very difficult. And then with the designing team, I have a designer, and I'm delegating that task to even I understood that assignment from Harrison without him telling that. I kept him for just designing, and then I'll have another person who will manage the social media overall. Like he can do for multiple people, and the designer can only design for multiple people. Mm-hmm. So it depends what you are giving to what people.
Yeah.
And for at what wage. It's difficult. It's difficult at the first time, but it's important to keep the machines running.
That's great. And on that note, guys, I think we're going to end the podcast for today, because we could go on forever, especially with both of you. You have such interesting takes. You come from different parts of the world and such different experiences. So for me, this has been really great fun. And I'd love to invite you back to the podcast so we can talk more about creating systems and why that's important and how you do it. Would you guys be up for that?
I'd be up for that, yeah.
Awesome. I'd be so delighted to have you back. So we'll get that on the calendar. But we'll thank you for today, for all of your insight, for sharing some of this wisdom, because realistically, bringing staff on isn't that hard. You just need to think about it a little differently than perhaps you have been. And on that note, thanks for joining us. We'll see you next week on the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe.